So, Ben Shapiro thinks we should end lockdowns in his new hit video, 4 Reasons Lockdowns Should End Today. Alright, let's take a look at this.
Lockdowns, you've heard they are the only solution.
3 seconds in and it's already this bad. Fuck. So, no one is saying that it's the only solution, it's one of the solutions. Other things that we should be doing is wear masks and practice social distancing. Lockdowns are definitely the main way of curbing the virus, but I'll get to that later.
You've heard that anybody who wants schools to allow students or businesses to operate or churches to open just wants grandma to die.
Yes, we've actually been saying that. You see, there's no reason as to why churches should open. Many people who attend churches tend to be older people. There's simply no need to open a building that indoctrinates people with bullshit. We already have the media doing that. The specific thing that Ben Shapiro was talking about here, and which people were responding to, was when Trump said he wants to see churches packed on Easter. But of course you left that out.
And I say, wouldn't it be great to have all of the churches full? I'm not sure that's going to be the day, but I would love to aim it right at Easter Sunday. So we're open for church service and services generally on Easter Sunday. That would be a beautiful thing.
Suicide is up, poverty is up, hunger is up. Millions of jobs are not coming back anytime soon. In just a moment, I'm going to give you 4 reasons that lockdowns are bad policy and should stop right this very minute. If you are not listening to this with your Raycon earbuds, you really should be. Click the link in the description right now to get 15% off your order.
Yeah, you guys lost your jobs and aren't getting any unemployment benefits? But buy some Raycon earbuds.
As it turns out, flattening the curve wasn't enough. Now we were told that lockdowns could magically crush the curve. Governors who reopened their states were ripped to shreds for having any curve at all. And governors who had already experienced a major spike in COVID, and in some cases, whose policies had resulted in mass death, were praised for having crushed the curve. Ron DeSantis in Florida was torn apart for allowing some beaches in Florida to remain open, despite the fact that beaches are one of the safest places on the planet to be safe from COVID.
Ah, yes, beaches, the safest area. Packed with thousands of college kids throwing parties, drowning the last 7 brain cells they have with alcohol. You also forgot to mention that the governor also opened Disney World, bars, and indoor dining. You also forgot to mention that he's doing this despite Florida having 10,000 cases a day on July 4th, which is when the supposed safe beaches were open.
In fact, they said that you just wanted to kill the elderly to get a haircut. But if you're Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot or Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, you were free to head out to the salon and get a hair dry. The media tore into anti-lockdown protesters, but dutifully informed Americans that if you were protesting against supposed systemic American racism, you were actually doing something good and positive for public health.
You're just committing a straw man. You're not explaining why lockdowns don't work. Exposing the hypocrisy of these officials doesn't deny the science. And while I do agree with Ben on these governors being hypocritical, it doesn't prove anything about lockdowns being ineffective.
Lockdowns may actually exacerbate the spread. According to Donald Luskin of Trend Macro, writing in the Wall Street Journal, quote, measuring from the start of the year to each state's point of maximum lockdown, which range from April 5th to April 18th, it turns out that lockdowns correlated with a greater spread of the virus. States with longer, stricter lockdowns also had larger COVID outbreaks. The 5 places with the harshest lockdowns, the District of Columbia, New York, Michigan, New Jersey, and Massachusetts, had the heaviest caseloads.
As far as a study conducted by Donald Luskin, I only found this video. In this video, he just says he gathered data from people's cell phone location to see who was locking down the most. He says New York locked down the most and is doing terrible.
Well, the most locked down were Connecticut, New York, Massachusetts, and these are all the ones with the worst performance.
Even though New York literally flattened the curve, he then says Ohio is doing great even though they are averaging 1,000 cases a day.
And you could look at some of the ones that locked down a lot less, like say Ohio, just to pick one at random, and they had a great result.
To top it all off, this guy is not at all qualified to be giving any sort of stats. He's a fucking investment officer. He's not qualified to be conducting any studies of this matter.
A study in the Lancet journal in July found similarly, quote, a longer time prior to implementation of any lockdown was associated with a lower number of detected cases.
Well, Ben conveniently left out in this study, it also says, however, full lockdowns and reduced country vulnerability to biological threats were significantly associated with increased patient recovery rates. Not to mention, this study only included countries with terrible lockdown measures. I'll include a link to this study in the description. The data clearly shows that lockdowns are vital to curbing the virus. You look at New York, a state in which they had 10,000 cases a day, has now been reduced to around 300 due to locking down. You look at New Zealand, a country that essentially eradicated the virus due to locking down. The fact that this is so controversial in the United States is the reason why so many Americans are dying. It's why we have the most cases in the world.
But first waves are inevitable. The only thing we can do is slow the spread and protect the vulnerable and the elderly.
What's your solution to this? So far, all you've been saying is that we should open everything back up.
The evidence on masking is mixed, given that some heavily masked nations like Italy and the UK got creamed, while Scandinavia, which doesn't mask, didn't.
What? So the only reason as to why these cases are spiking up is that masks don't work? So there aren't any other factors, like the fact that there's no lockdown in place?
And surveyed people in 20 African countries, they found that more than 2/3 said they would run out of food and water if they had to stay at home for 14 days.
Ah, yes. Pick a part of the world that is overwhelmingly filled with third world countries.
We conservatively estimate that the national lockdown is responsible for at least 700,000 lost years of life every month, or about 1.5 million so far, already far surpassing the COVID-19 total.
Who's we? He doesn't list any studies here and just gives us his word. Where is he getting this information?
Children have been damaged by being barred from schools, despite the fact that COVID is significantly less deadly to young children than the flu.
Why does Ben only look at deaths? The long-term health effects of COVID are serious. Long-term health effects such as long-lasting damage to the heart muscle, the lungs, and strokes, and not to mention a high hospitalization rate. Why is death the only concern? Quality of life isn't important? Also, does Ben realize that kids can spread the virus to people who don't have such a good immune system?
And the fact that, by most studies, children are not a chief transmission vector for adults.
Where did you get this study from? You haven't included any sources to back up your absurd claim.
They pretend that young people being diagnosed with COVID is a grave threat. It isn't, unless they are transmitting to others who are vulnerable.
Why is he acting as if it's so unrealistic that someone would spread the virus to someone more vulnerable?
And there is some good news here. Studies suggest that pre-existing T-cell immunity means that many people will not get COVID or will be asymptomatic.
Again, where's the source to your claim? Even if it were true, it generally isn't. We shouldn't have people rolling the dice on whether they have this immunity or not.
That cannot be allowed to happen again. Lockdowns have to end, and they have to end right now.
Ben Shapiro doesn't care about you. He especially doesn't care about you if you are immunocompromised. Given the like to dislike ratio on this video, neither do his fans. Ben only cares about his livelihood. He'll say just about anything as long as it keeps him relevant. This video is spreading dangerous misinformation, and I hope the 7 people that watched my video will realize this. So please, wash your hands, social distance, and stay home when you can. That's it.